The paint still got to cure for a number of days, but it's dry enough to handle, so I'm just going back here and cleaning up some of the tape around the areas that I had. Looking much better there, and you can see where I taped out around the speaker grommets themselves and where the spider attaches. I just wanted to make certain that I could thread a new screw back over that with no resistance. I had that taped out as well. Alright, I'm just taking time here to center that fill coil, humbucking coil assembly, what I referred to as the yoke earlier, back to the speaker frame itself. And you guys that followed along, this is where I drilled the 4 holes. You can see the holes in the speaker frame are just a little larger, of course, than the holes that I drilled and tapped. And that's by design, so I can do the tweaking that I'm doing here to make sure that the center pole piece here resides in the center of the speaker frame. So I'm just using the old string trick here and going from the center back to these points here, 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 and here. I'll lock down these 2 fasteners for now, and then I'll go back with some Loctite and put new fasteners in this location, back these out, and then repeat the process. And while everything is still wet and the Loctite has not set up, I'll repeat the process. Okay, I've checked numerous times and everything is set here. I'll go ahead and remove these 2, put a little bit of the thread locker on this one, and partially snug it back down. I'll repeat the same thing for this one. We'll let that set up for about 10 minutes, then I'll release these 2 and repeat the process. Alright guys, got everything set up here and centered to the best of my ability. And I did do a dry fit earlier as well with the spider back in and the center pole piece. Not perfectly aligned, just to make certain that it looked good. But we're not out of the woods yet. I'll let this set up for a few more minutes, and then we'll take the center pole piece here and get it reattached and center it as well. Okay guys, I'm just doing a dry fit here one more time with the shims in place that I've cut out of a old plastic milk carton for that center pole piece. And I'll snug this back down and put another nut on top of it, and we'll use some more of the thread locker when the appropriate time comes here, when I'm satisfied with the dry fit. Anyway, great product too. I wanted to mention the Renaissance micro crystalline wax polish. It's a great rust inhibitor, and it's what I actually used on my Silvertone chassis, along with some of the Crud Cutter Picklets 20, but primarily I meant to show that and respond back to folks, but a couple nice applications of the wax. And I did the same here for the center pole piece. So the center pole piece has that same product on it, as well as that fill coil assembly. So that circle area that you see there made out of iron is also coated with the wax. So let me go ahead and snug this down one more time and just check here to make sure I'm happy with the fit. And everything looks good. It's hard to probably see that, but the voice coil seems to move up and down around that center pole piece and inside the that magnetic gap just fine. But we'll use shims as well when the time comes to get this back in place. Okay, let me go ahead and slide the fill coil assembly back in. Okay, there it is. And I'll need to get my shims out now, and we'll make sure that we're aligned in this area. So here's my assembly again, a really nice thick washer. I'm going to use a star washer. I'll use some thread locker on this as well, but for now I just want to go ahead and do another dry fit. So I'm going to snug this down and grab my shims here and get this aligned here as I snug it down. But let me pull out the shims, and nothing but some plastic milk carton. And as I rotate those around, it feels good. So, to the best of my ability, I think I've got the center pole piece aligned, and that dropped right in. And this one dropped right in. Based on what I can see, it looks like with it falling in place like that, that I'm centered pretty well. Of course, when we tack this down around the edge here, the surround, I'll try to use some shims here around the voice coil itself, but you can see the movement up and down freely. So that's a good sign. At least we're not far off. And it looks like it's coming out just as easy. That's a good sign. Alright guys, I've got everything locked in place to the best of my ability. Another dry fit here with everything torqued down. I got the old output transformer cleaned up. Looks brand new. I mentioned I've still got to splice these wires here on the primary side that go back to the speaker plug, but I'll address that later after getting this mounted back to the speaker frame. A little more progress here. You can see I've got the output transformer mounted back in. Nothing is soldered up yet on this side that goes to the voice coil, and the other side of the secondary you can see goes back to the humbucking coil. And the other side of the humbucking coil, right here with the red lead, will be soldered back down here and make connection back with the voice coil. The two leads here on the bottom are the field coil, which will splice in some new leads as well. So I'll get that addressed next, and then once that's done, I think we'll be at a point where I don't have to worry about damaging the speaker cone, or at least reduce my risk. We'll go ahead and try to get the speaker cone back in, get it centered and attached back to the frame. Alright guys, cleaned up pretty good here. I've still got some cleanup to do, but you'll see the field coil arrangement here and the primary to the output transformer here. The color coding for this pair is not accurate. Yellow is correct, but still need to take care of the brown here and dye it black, which I'll do. Then I'll twist these together, bundle them together, then get the connector on. Then it's time to move along to the speaker cone itself. Yeah, I mentioned the field coil lead here. The cloth color is brown. I don't have any black, but we'll take care of that using just a little bit of the military grade edge dressing black here on the cloth. You can see it does a nice job. Go ahead and put a couple more pieces of heat shrink here. Alright, I think that'll be satisfactory for now. Another dry fit and everything looks good still. I elected to do something different on this speaker, and the reason why, you can see I don't have a lot of speaker cone to reach back up here on the frame itself. I'll still be able to go in here and lay a bead of glue down underneath this area, but removing the old cardboard gasket, you can see here, which is in good shape. The cone itself doesn't rest underneath it. But that's not a problem. What I did was measure the existing cardboard gasket and increased it every so slightly to get out to about right here from the edge, which is exactly 8 millimeters. And you can see I took the circle cutter here and cut a new gasket. So I think this will work well. And you can see I've already got my shims in place, and I'm able to push up and down on the voice coil, and I've got the spider attached, and there's some friction, and I would expect some to be there with the shims in place, but I think I'm going to be good. There's a look at the fasteners showing up for the spider itself. What a pain it was to get those back in there with the washer, and also make sure I didn't damage the spider itself. And I've got all the lead wires soldered up also. As I mentioned, I just don't have a lot to work with on the speaker cone around the frame, but I've got some white glue here. I'll use it to seal this outer edge of the cone right here, very near the surround, and see if I can leak a little bit underneath as such. So I'm going to get my head up here close. I'll do this off camera, and we'll let that dry for a bit. Then I'll come back. We'll use the contact cement itself. I'll place another generous bead around this area. Lay this down. We'll let everything dry, and then when the time's right, we'll test the speaker. Alright guys, I did the best I could with it there, trying to get everything to seal and to get a little bit of the glue down there behind the speaker cone all the way around. And I'm still just checking here just to make sure that the spider moves freely and can bounce back, and the cone moves even with the shims. And it appears for the most part that the cone is laying down. I was able to fill some of the gaps over in this area where the speaker cone was tore just a bit. But when I get the gasket on after this dries and we put the adhesive on, hopefully I can get some adherence between the gasket and the cone itself without compromising the surround. Let's let this continue to dry. When it's nice and clear, I'll go back and get the other DevCon contact cement out, place it on, and let it sit just for a bit and get tacky, and then go ahead and get the gasket here applied. By the way, while we're just waiting for that white glue to dry clear, my shims are actually made out of some 35mm film. they're thin enough to get back inside these old voice coils. Still a little snug. That's why you see 3 instead of 4. We're trying to go all the way around. Just a little too tight inside the coil. I think this is dry enough now. It's not tacky. Still just a little wet in this area, and that's where the cone itself was torn. But I'm not worried about that. I think it will continue to dry on the back side. Let me go ahead and get some of this contact cement laid in this area and get the gasket here that I hand cut applied. Made a little mess right there, but other than that I think I'm good. Maybe a little thin right in this area. Let me just double check myself. Alright, now I've got this marked back and front. Really doesn't make that much difference, but I thought one looked better than the other. Alright, let me continue to apply some pressure right here. I'll let this dry. And to be continued, we'll come back and remove the shims and test the speaker. Here's a look at the final speaker back together with the new gasket on the outside. And I ended up not using any clamps. I just continued for about 10 minutes just working my finger around the cardboard and just make sure I had good adherence there with the speaker frame and the cone. So I don't think the surround itself is compromised, if any, just very little. Let's go ahead and get the shims out that I placed. And I'm going to just push up and down a little bit on the speaker and cone. And good thing is I don't hear any rubbing, but you know, we're not out of the woods yet, as I mentioned. I'm not going to bring any voltage up on this right now, but let me hook up my audio signal generator and just see if we can get anything at all out of this thing, and then we'll look to energize the field coil as well here in just a few minutes. Okay guys, let's give it a test drive. I've got a magnet on the back of the center pole piece for now until we fire up the DC power supply and activate the field coil. And I'm just feeding my signal generator here, audio signal generator, into the primary of the output transformer. That's pretty good there. It's 15 hertz, 20, 30, 40, 60. I don't hear any rattling of the voice coil. That's 100, 1,000, that's 600. So success so far. Let's get the DC power supply hooked up as I mentioned and get the field coil activated. Okay guys, we're ready to energize the field coil now. Still got the audio signal generator hooked up the way it was. I'm going to be generating an audio signal by default right at 400 Hertz in the beginning. You can see I've got my fluke set for milliamps. I'm going to look at the DC current, and I've got it hooked up to my adjustable power supply. I'll probably draw somewhere between 15 and 20 milliamps and let it be. I have not studied the schematics, so I don't want to create any harm to the fill coil without doing that research, but we should hear a notable increase in the amplitude of the signal. Let me go ahead and flip on the power supply here, and we'll ramp it up slowly and see what happens here to the amplitude of the signal. Okay, that's a great sign. I think I'll just leave it there for now. Let me just change the frequency here around a little bit. I'm going to switch over to about 600 Hertz. And there's 1000. Let me switch scales here. There's 100 Hertz. And there's 60 Hertz. And the great thing at 60, I don't hear the voice coil rubbing. There's 40. And all the way down to 20. And actually all the way down to 10. Let me see how high I can go here. You may not be able to hear that, but I still can. That's somewhere around 6,000 Hertz, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, and 1,500, and back to 1,000. Let me cut the amplitude down now. So Scott, if you're watching this video, I'll get the speaker returned to you as quick as possible. I still need to put the plug on the end of it here, but we'll call it a success for now, and hopefully when you get it back in your restored Emerson receiver, this thing will play well. Okay, one final test here. You can see I'm across the fill coil and 1812 ohms, so looking really good there. And the old speaker plug reinstalled. Guys, thanks again for watching this short series on this little rebuild of an Emerson R-156 speaker with a defective fill coil.